So, ladies and gentlemen, I questioned myself 2 years ago when I started this podcast channel if I ever would do a feature on this athlete. Not because you can't do anything on him, but he's passing at the early age of about 38. Left a lot of hockey fans sad that he did pass away because, he had a lot of followers and he had a lot of people that looked up to him and saw him as one of the better players of his generation. Now, one of our subscribers, followers, RS Hockey, made an indirect request for this. So for RS Hockey, this is for you. We're going to talk about the curious case of Doug Wickenheiser. Now, when you talk to Montreal Canadiens fans, the name Doug Wickenheiser makes them shake their heads and maybe bang their head against a wall, and I tell you why. There was no question he came out of a major junior with the Regina Pats as probably one of the most highly ranked players towards the 1980 draft. Now let's look at this, ladies and gentlemen. Montreal had lost in the quarterfinals to Minnesota in a heavy upset. Guy Lafleur was injured. There was a francophone player that was as high a prominence as Doug Wickenheiser was in that year. Of course, it was a superstar and Hall of Famer, Denis Savard. So how it worked in Quebec, they would try to draft the best French player available in the entry draft. Now, there was no denying that Wickenheiser was high in everybody's radar because he had some really good stats with the Regina Pats. His last season with Regina, the totals were immense. Combined regular season playoffs, he scored, ladies and gentlemen, 103 goals, 107 assists for 210 points. 210 points in the WHL, which was a very, very strong league. Now, he was ranked number one in Canada by the Hockey News, our great publication, as the number one prospect entering the draft, mainly because he captained the Pats to a berth in Memorial Cup. He was also the CHL Player of the Year, which is the minor hockey player of the year in Canada for junior, like Lafreniere. So when the draft occurred, the Montreal Canadiens management, Sam Pollock, was gone. They took Doug Wickenheiser. It seems like a no-brainer. But like I said, because Denis Savard was available, he wasn't taken with the number one picks. The Montreal media kind of turned on him, and Wickenheiser really, really struggled in his first season to adapt to the NHL game. Now, to give him every opportunity, he was even playing on and off on Lafleur's line, or second line as we call it. First season with Montreal in a very, a disappointing season. 7 goals and 8 assists for 15 points. Second season, 82, 12 goals and 23 assists for 35 points. Third season, he really started to come into his own with 25 goals. But everybody, anytime Wickenheiser wouldn't produce or not produce enough, they would keep saying, well, look what Denis Savard did with Chicago. Denis Savard brought Chicago within at least a couple of games from a Stanley Cup berth, and for a lot of people, when Edmonton finally won the Cup, they were the number 2 team, allegedly, Chicago. I think they were number 3 in the whole of the NHL. Now, in his fourth season with Montreal, the club evidently lost patience with Wickenheiser's development and traded him to the St. Louis Blues. Now, he helped St. Louis, of all things, to almost one game of the Stanley Cup final in 1986. Now, 86 in a shortened season for Wickenheiser, you had 8 goals, 11 assists, but really came along in the playoffs. Remember, this is the team that picked up the Doug Gilmour and Hunter. Now, in Game 6 of that series against Calgary, because as you know, Calgary beat Edmonton in the quarterfinals, they came with the biggest comeback probably in St. Louis history, and it's called in St. Louis the Monday Night Miracle, which forced a Game 7. Of course, the Blues lost the deciding game in Calgary 2-1. Imagine not making the Stanley Cup final by 1 goal. Must be pretty hard to take. Now, later went on to Vancouver, the New York Rangers, and Washington, but did not play in the NHL after the 1990 season when he sent down to the Skipjacks. He played in Europe for a while, including Austria and Italy. Came back to the IHL in 93 with Peoria with 75 points in 80 games, and finished up his career in the IHL with the Fort Wayne Comets with 22 goals, 37 assists for 59 points. Now, what was completely bizarre, ladies and gentlemen, he never played a playoff game with the Montreal Canadiens, by the way, despite all those seasons with the squad. Totally bizarre. NHL totals 556 games, 111 goals, 165 assists for 275 points. But the pressure of being compared to other number one draft picks, being compared to Denis Savard, it kind of wore on him. Now, did the stress cause physical problems? Who knows? But on August 1994, Wickenheiser was diagnosed with epiloid sarcoma, which he had first noticed actually in 1990, and was removed for his wrist. But 3 years later, in October 87, the cancer came back and spread to his lungs, at which point it was inoperable. He died on January 12, 1999, and his life story, of course, was published in that famous book, The Last Face-Off, the Doug Wickenheiser story, written in March 2000, and as well the Mid-States Club Hockey Association, the governing body for high school hockey in St. Louis, have also named their championship trophy in his honor for his contribution to St. Louis hockey, and it goes to small school and second division teams. Now, an arena in his hometown of Regina has been named the Doug Wickenheiser Memorial Arena in his honor, and is located in the city's northwest corners. Now, ironically, the Blues have not reissued Wickenheiser's number 14 since his death, although it has not been formally retired. Now, Blues players wore a special helmet decal with a wick of a candle and the number 14 during parts of the 98 and 99 season because it's so highly regarded. 1999, a banner which became the symbol of the 14 Fund, the official Blues charity establishment memory, was permanently placed in the rafters of the Blues home arena, which was then the Kyle Center, which is now the Enterprise Center. The emblem was worn by all NHL players in the 99 NHL All-Star Game, and it was also sold to the public for a small donation and became a popular trend among youth hockey players in St. Louis. One of the two high school state championships played at Enterprise, of course, is named after him. So, I don't want to talk bad about the dead, but Montreal had a bastion of number one picks in the 70s and early 80s. Should they have taken Denis Savard? Yes. Was Doug Wickenheiser... Could Doug Wickenheiser be a Montreal Canadian? Of course. But the problem is when something happens that high. You know, when there's a 100-meter race, I give an example here. If you know who Harry Jerome is, Harry Jerome won bronze at the 100 meters at the Olympics in 84. He couldn't catch the fastest runner in the world that year, but he was moving up in the race. Denis Savard was moving up in the race. What they really should have done is traded Wickenheiser's rights to somebody else, got a player, and then secured Savard. In some way, they could have done it. But by taking Doug Wickenheiser, there's never been an Anglophone superstar in Montreal of that era. Okay? Frank Mahovlich was not as big as Jean Beliveau. Peter Mahovlich was never big as Jacques Lemaire or Guy Lafleur. There was always a Francophone superstar. Can you imagine the amount of jerseys that would have been sold with Denis Savard on the back? My God, they were criticizing people for years because they didn't draft Andre Savard, the guy with Buffalo. They were criticized for not drafting certain... excuse me. Certain secondary players. When Pierre Bouchard became available, they took him. When Lambert became available, they took him, but it was a late rounds. I think Doug Wickenheiser is best to say he impacted hockey in all the areas he went to. People have learned from the Doug Wickenheiser draft. They didn't learn with Alexander Daig, but the problem is, at the time, it's not like now where you can do a background to say what the social impact. Doug Wickenheiser being drafted had no social impact on, we don't call it Habs Nation, but you see, the Habs extension. The Montreal Canadiens were an extension of Quebec for many people. So not the draft. Denis Savard was a rejection because he considered Montreal Canadiens an Anglophone franchise for years, and that's why the Nordiques were so popular. Anyway, so Doug Wickenheiser, your life ended in a very, very tough manner, but you have my respect. Any guy who plays in the NHL and makes an impact in St. Louis, Montreal Canadiens fans have a big respect for St. Louis because of the connection through the years. But I think, I don't want to talk bad about the dead, but we should have took Savard, but woulda, shoulda, coulda. Anyway, have a good day. Bye.